join us in finding that synergy here at TCC.
Thank you. So we've got a panel and we'll get to the panel right away. I've got some questions for them, but the last question will really turn towards our audience, and we'll kind of open it up for you to ask any questions that you have or offer any comments. So we'll work through the panel, but with the understanding that we're going to get to a broader discussion with all of us. Good. And these are the faculty, these are the folks who've inspired writing Synergies. And so these were the people that graciously agreed to be on the panel. I'll get them to introduce themselves. And you saw the list, so everyone knows your name, your area of expertise, or what the area you teach, and one surprising or important way that you use writing in your field. We good with that? Why don't we start down here and just move all the way across? Thank you, Kim.
So, Chaperon, I teach chemistry here at TCC. And one surprising way, at least when I first started in chemistry, that we use writing is like writing grant proposals to get money and funding for our research. I was really surprised by that as a student, and how much writing skills sort of, integral to that process.
Hi, I'm Sean Boyle. I'm in the math department. What surprised me was when I hit my junior year as an undergrad and realized all of a sudden that I wasn't just writing sheets of equations. I was actually writing stories. Math has stories.
Wow.
Mm.
Very cool.
My name is Beth Atkin. I am the chair of the Paralegal Studies program, but I started actually in writing studies, teaching English 101 and 235, which is the technology or the writing technology course, sorry, or tech writing course, and then got an opportunity to actually develop a writing program for the community health program, our bachelor's program. And they thought I could do that because I have a master's in agriculture. But what appeals to me about all of this is I am a product of multidisciplinary approach. I got into my master's program having only 2 bachelor science classes because the person in charge of that at WazU said, but you have legal experience and we need that mindset of being able to read agricultural laws and be able to interpret them so that we can continue to do the science. So sorry, that's a little expansive on the area of expertise. But one important way that we're using it now in the paralegal studies program, for a lot of firms, physical files do not exist anymore. Everything is done electronically. That includes filing motions. The court does not use files anymore. They use everything electronically, which means everything is in writing in the legal field at this point in time, and not on a physical piece of paper, but in a case management system, in an e-filing system. So that's a real shift for a lot of our students.
Good afternoon. My name is Klaus Ramos. I teach in the communications department. I teach intercultural communications, interpersonal, and some of the other subjects. One of the anecdotes that I can tell you about with that stays open in my mind that students struggle with is writing about themselves, and they struggle to sell themselves when they're applying to something, applying for a scholarship or a job, or writing essays of any kind. And they find it surprising when I tell them that is one of the most difficult things to do, write about yourselves. And one way to combat that, I often tell them, because a teacher once told me, if you have a certain expertise, you're good at public speaking. My professor said that. And then it wasn't you selling. And so there are ways that you can combat that and learn how to write about yourselves. But the most important thing is that they struggle with that until they understand that it's one of the most difficult things to do, to learn to how to present yourself.
I'm Lisa Hoffman Reyes, and I've been teaching at TCC for about 15 years, mostly composition literature, and within the last 6 or 7 years, technical writing and also professional writing in the HIM program and the health program. And so maybe not surprising, but definitely important way that I use writing is in comments on student work and trying to use writing carefully, empathetically, clearly, and modeling kind of writing that I'm looking for them and with personality and warmth and professionalism. So I think that some people have moved away from comments, but I really hold tight to the value of good student feedback in terms of comments rather than numeric rubrics.
I'm kind of happy to hear about those rubrics. Well, hello, I'm Jennifer Karshna, and I teach in the early childhood education department. And so my expertise is in understanding young children and their teachers and how they support children's learning. And in thinking about this surprising or important way, writing, I'm thinking of it used in the field of early childhood education. Well, one thing that came to my mind is we're role models. We're role models for young children. The teachers are, and I'm a role model as an instructor for my students. And so understanding the complexities of what an infant or a toddler is doing as it relates to writing and language development is interesting. And so that's something that I need to understand. But then I also, it's understanding then the student that is working with young children who needs to know that and be confident enough in their writing to be that role model for children, as well as be a student at the college and have the confidence and the ability to write in functional ways, filling out the incident-accident report, or writing a reflective essay, or writing an academic paper, because they need to be able to do that and they deserve to learn that skill. So, thank you.
I think it's interesting, the range, if you think of the range of what we've talked about here, from personal to technology to, you know, that whole idea of interdisciplinary in the sciences and math, where we don't normally think about the importance of writing, and yet, of course, you know, that's a mistake. It's a mistake. I mean, there's just kind of a broad range. But one thing I was thinking about too with myself was emails. How being careful when I, like responding to students, being careful when I craft emails to my colleagues to maintain a kind of clarity, a collegiality, but also a sense of formality as well, even, and how important it is that we communicate consistently, because we do it in emails so often, and how important writing is there as well. All right. So for the panel, and just answer if this works for you, but the first one is transferable skills. In your field, in what ways are academic writing skills important and applied, or do they transfer into the workplace? It's a connection with those skills and the workplace. Yeah. Any takers for that one?
Can you jump in here?
Yeah.
It really is easy when you're looking at paralegal studies. The reality is because, as I said, everything they're doing is writing now. Everything from the emails that Ken mentioned, which are actually records that they're keeping, that can be used in regards to not only client contact, but contact with opposing counsel, and can actually end up in front of a court. So you have to be very cautious what you put in them. Everything from learning to write an email and how to do it effectively to that analytical writing that they're doing in English 101, information literacy. How do you find credible sources? How do you then take that information from credible sources and use it to support a position? And that results in students writing what we call legal memorandums, where they give an opinion based upon the law as it applies to a client's facts. Those are then taken by attorneys and put into motions, oftentimes that paralegal draft. And so for us, everything from English 101, all the writing that they do in the other classes helps them become more effective writers in the paralegal program.
It makes me think too, for the paralegal, do they have to have 102? Is it usually just 101?
It's just 101.
I know, so 101 is so important for the students that we have in our 101 classes to send on to you. We really have to do a good job.
Yes.
Yeah,
And having taught 101, I know the variety.
yeah,
of
yeah,
classes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that is something when you talk
Yeah.
about having consistent curriculum,
yeah.
bluntly, when I get them in and they do have legal writing classes with us,
Yeah,
depending on who they took 101 with,
Yeah.
they may be more comfortable with the analytical writing.
just the idea of synergies, making connections across the board to foster those conversations does seem healthy.
101 is imperative for
Yeah,
students to be
yeah.
successful.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Anyone else for, yeah,
Like
thank you.
Prof Tech again, early childhood is a Prof Tech program, and ways in which teachers, my students, our early childhood students might be writing is in emails to their colleagues or to families. And in one common thing that happens in early childhood programs is writing a family or parent newsletter. And that needs the credible sources, the clear, concise writing, and writing it in that way that is to the audience. I don't think families would have time to read a 3-page essay. It might be interesting, but they want to know what happened with their children in the classroom and how that relates to development or something pertinent to early childhood. So the credible sources, clear, concise, descriptives. And then I think of it as the writing as a way of creating and thinking. And they're creating curriculum for young children and they need to write that down. That needs to be written so their co-teachers can see, so their bosses and directors can see, and so the families and parents can see. So those are all, I think, I have not taught English 101, but I think those are things they learn in various disciplines, various classes.
This makes me want to pick on science folks about clear, concise, especially Kayla. Yeah.
Kind of clear. Like one of the big things that we teach with lab reports and procedures, even like reading a procedure and being able to do a lab, is clarity. Because, if you tell a student like weigh out this substance, it's like, okay, how do I do that? If they haven't used a scale before, well, you want to write that down, go to the scale, write down this many words, whatever. All of that is really important. And then being able to, I always tell my students, like your lab notebook someone should be able to pick it up and redo your experiment. And the more clear and, concise and, you are, then they can redo that experiment the way that you did it, right? Yeah, and then I heard like all kinds of other stuff that applies to science as well. Like, I'm thinking about how when you're communicating your research, you want to think about your audience, right? And the way that I write my, they write their lab report for me is going to be different than the way that they write it for if they're presenting at a conference, or the way that they write it if it's a scientific paper that's going in a journal versus, maybe they're writing a popular science, how does my research pertain to the real world? So yeah, anyways, all that
Yeah.
writing is really important, those skills in
Yeah.
all kinds of ways that students and myself included, we're just, oh no, science is different from writing.
Yeah, thank you. And it just made me realize what Jennifer was saying is like someone to be able to just pick up your curriculum and understand it. It sounds like that's a common thing in science. Yeah,
I thought of that same thing while she was saying that.
exactly. The synergy, we're already finding it.
Anything else? Or go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that a lot of my technical writing students are in the either engineering or computer science programs. And so the idea of writing reports along with emails and other business correspondences is really important. But the reports in particular, and I love what you're talking about with audience, that's one of the first things I want them to think about is And I use an example, like if you're asking the library to purchase more books, do you think that, the president of the college would be more appropriate, or the director of the library, or someone in your department, and why, and that is going to steer everything. So this idea of, writing with purpose and audience is key for especially my 235 students.
I was thinking about that with the science writing over the last 20 years, as it's gotten that awareness of audience and writing to laymen like me, that the quality of writing and the writing in the science fields is so good. It's so rich now. It's just a joy. It's just a joy. Good. Let's move to the next question, and that's collaboration for the panel. How is collaboration across departments or across programs or services shaped your understanding of writing?
Also, for the audience, I have these questions printed out for you.
So that sense of collaboration across different programs, departments, services, how has that influenced the way you view writing, the importance of writing or writing in your field?
I have a thought. But if someone else would rather, okay. Well, I think it's helpful for me to think about these things that people have said in the way, when I hear about what's happening in other classes and other disciplines, it's reinforcing what I know for my field, but it's also expanding my understanding. So I can take that into consideration with how I'm thinking and what I'm doing in my classes. It feels pretty nice to hear that others are required. We have forms that have to be filled out correctly. You have to be able to describe the way that if a child falls, so that we are not sending a mother into a crisis or something. So, I mean, but to hear, sometimes I feel too strict about it, but to hear that this is happening and that, and the other ways it's happening and the value, that's valuable to me.
Well, that's that first sub question, and that, what have we learned or would like to learn from working with people in other fields? But what have we learned from people in other fields? Yeah, yeah. What else?
It's an idea actually I stole from the chemistry physics folks. Yeah, blame me. Talking in particular about lab reports and keeping journals in class, and I've started doing that in my classes, which might seem a little strange for a math class, right? It's not a lab science. It's not really a science at all, but having students be able to kind of keep track of their work, organizing their work, presenting it in a clear fashion, certainly on the STEM side. Having been around enough nursing in kind of in the context of taking care of my parents when I did that, and then working with a lot of allied health students when I teach statistics, the importance of being able to present something very clearly and concisely, which kind of goes back to the previous topic. I mean, our allied health folks are going to chart, right? And they're going to be working with patients, and they're going to be writing down everything they observe about those patients. So I want my students to be able to think clearly about things, to be able to express things in a clear fashion. And so having seen enough charting in my day, what folks have written about my parents, I understand from that how clear I need to be with my students so they can in turn and return the favor.
It's interesting how the idea of one discipline informing another,
Yeah, I think about I think about what you were talking about, Ken, about science writing and how it's gotten better. Nature writing too. I mean, we're looking at this, global warming, issue, and used to be when we were, presenting our scientific findings, it was like, no, be very objective, but don't talk about, don't put your own spin on things and stuff like that. We want all just objective, and that's important in certain contexts, but also when you're communicating with the public, you know, or even trying to get money to do your research, right? You have to make a persuasive argument for why this matters.
Yeah.
And so I could kind of see collaboration there with, you know, lots of different
Yeah.
realms. You know.
It also hints at just the value of writing, the importance of writing. I mean, we're not just spinning our wheels. If we do good work here, it's going to benefit students. There's a real end goal. Yeah. Good. Anything else on that one?
Just, oh, I'm sorry.
No, you got
Thinking about collaboration with different services and thinking about the Writing Center and thinking, for instance, about Lindsay, and I have collaborated so wonderfully. And that has shaped my understanding of writing in terms of the kinds of feedback students are getting at the Writing Center, the feedback that they can get, the different perspectives that are available that are really useful for students. And I'm thinking just in one example being AI. So I have, you know, a policy, but then the Writing Center has some wonderful statements, comments, handouts, and ideas that are useful for me and for my students as well to fold into everything that we're doing. And then also thinking about collaborating in a team taught environment with Adrian Cormoran in HIM 301. It's really shaped my understanding of writing in a, you know, rather than, I have a literature background, so it's much more kind of touchy-feely than, you know, health information management, but understanding what students need there and how what I'm bringing in with the humanities is also very valuable to them as HIM professionals. So that collaboration has really strengthened my understanding.
Those collaborations changed me. I taught, I don't know, 5 years ago with Ralph Hitz. He did geology and I did English 101. And then he put me onto John McPhee, Basin and Range, all of the geology books. And I thought, if only I could write that well, you know? So that's just remarkable kind of rich experience we have when we just teach with someone else. Yeah, it's wonderful. Good. Anything else on that one? Should I shift? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of, what you said earlier, it's about, how students don't like to write about themselves, but how reflective writing that I learned when I was teaching in health has become very effective for my paralegal students to measure their own success and set goals.
Yeah.
So that I use reflective writing at the beginning of the quarter. Okay, now that you have a definition of what a paralegal is, what are some of the skills that you have? What are some that you need? And then having them go back to that mid-quarter and end quarter and be able to reflect on, okay, here's what I've grown in.
Yeah.
Here's what I still need to learn. It's really powerful for them to take that ownership of, okay, this is the type of paralegal I want to be, and therefore these are the areas I need to focus in on if I'm learning.
Yeah, yeah. I was wondering about that when you were talking about the math, when you're having them document that kind of careful math. Is it also personal? Is it reflective in that sense? Or
You know, I haven't done that, although it's an interesting idea.
I was wondering about that. Yeah, yeah. And fold that in.
No.
Yeah. Alrighty, let me switch gears to interdisciplinary mindset. How can writing, so thinking in a broader way across campus, all of us in the room, how can writing create meaningful connections across different fields? Where do you personally see synergy in your experience? And where would it be nice to see it? Or where we were fostering these, where can we make connections, collaboration that'll be helpful for you?
You know, it actually brings up what we were doing in ED this morning. I was, I already got the mentally expert, right? And we were creating scenarios to try to present this, you know, this way of getting students to engage with something. And as we were doing that over at the math table, we were coming up with stories, right? We were really creating stories, and I'm sorry about that. So we're, you know, we're telling stories, and where does that come from?
Yeah.
Right? It's math isn't, you know, you don't think of math as a storytelling discipline. But we certainly learn it elsewhere, right?
Yeah, and everyone else who's kind of in a world of narrative, writing narrative and to make that connection to math would just help us. It would just be so beneficial to,
I mean, my graduate advisor talked about Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
When he taught differential equations.
as it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Anyone else on meaningful connections across fields, and what you personally see for a kind of synergy as we go forward? And it could even be impact you've seen when students engage in interdisciplinary assignments. Student experiences as well.
I'll tell you a little something about what I seen with, I, I try to be playful with my students and I tell them, so please no one be offended, it's just a figure of speech. I tell them that the best classes that anyone can ever take in college should be chemistry and public speaking. Because you have to learn chemistry, how else, the things that you eat. How do you know what goes into what, where, how, the area so anyways, like I said, I've been playful. And so, and then I include other subjects. And in doing that, get them to choose a subject that it doesn't have to be the first thing that comes to mind or time of year or what makes you upset. It can be from another discipline. What is the best class you have ever had and write about it? And so, I personally believe that the most difficult teachers that I had in my college career were actually chemistry and French. Like people who teach French like crazy people. They're just they're so intense, they're so, and so then, but I loved every minute of it. And I mean, here I am talking about it, 40 years later. How important was that? And then writing about it and chemistry, same way, right? I mean, who can neglect that? Chemistry, right? And so, and to be able to find the connections between those subjects and the way you write and how you make sense of those subjects, it goes a long way when you're collaborating with other people. We were just having a conversation when we started. It's like, oh my goodness, my favorite class ever was ethics law, right? And how nothing to do with communications in terms of public speaking or interpersonal, but I found it so relevant because it makes an impact on how you write and how you make references to the subjects that you learn about. So in finding the connections from different fields, right, is something that is so essential and crucial to be able to learn how to reference those fields.
Yeah, and it's a reminder too that this is not new. We're not, there's no great breakthrough here. All of us personally have experienced different writing kinds of, classroom kind of challenges. We may be science faculty or involved in specific fields, but we took French classes, we took literature classes, we studied Romeo and Juliet, we had to write paper. I mean, we've done those things. Where we're going and trying to collectively get together, we've experienced personally with all of the history we have in our own academic paths that we've taken, all the different disciplines that we've, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else on the collaboration? How about collective vision? How can we join forces across campus and really with a kind of a student focus here? How can we join forces across campus to help students view writing as a valuable lifelong skill beyond the classroom? So much of what we've talked about is pertinent to what we do, how we inform them and how we prepare them for the workplace or for future classes. But just lifelong learning, that whole idea of setting students up for a lifetime of valuing writing. How do we join forces across campus to help them view writing as a lifelong skill beyond the classroom? What do you think?
And I send my students to the writing clearing center whenever possible for writing help,
Yeah,
which they always kind of look at it weird because this is a math class. It's for writing.
yeah. But the one thing you're doing is you're bringing your student in contact with someone who loves writing.
Yeah.
You know that they're, that's who they're gonna get. And so, I mean, what a nice connection to make, yeah.
That was a plug for you, Lindsay.
Yeah.
I think just in our conversations, I'm hearing this value of writing and the various ways that we teach it or support students in it or use it ourselves. And when we have that thinking and we're talking about it and more faculty are bringing that forth to the front of their mind, somehow I think that gets conveyed to students. There's those inner values that come out in our teaching that we might not think about, but we could make a little more intentional. And students pick up on what we're excited about, right? I mean, we talk about that with young children, but I don't think it's different with adults. Not that I'm saying adults are children, but enthusiasm is contagious, right? So if we're valuing writing and we're across our disciplines and collectively as a campus, somehow the students are going to pick up on that, I think.
Yeah.
I think we have a common goal. But it starts from a common place of all of us recognizing that you don't become an expert in writing. We're all students. There is no perfection. There is no answer to an equation. Like we're all, whether you're starting here as a 16-year-old in the running start program, you've been teaching here for 40 years, we're all still learning to write better. So we're all students. And taking away from, helping students kind of take that pressure off in regards to feeling the need for it to be perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. We're not perfect. We don't write perfectly. And so if we recognize that as a community, we're all not experts, we're all learners, then that may be a place to build from across the campus.
It reminds me of when you're working with a student and the student recommends, oh, you should read this. Something good is happening here because they recognize that you're a lifelong learner. There's an exchange. It's just so healthy. Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah.
to add to that. For a few years, I stepped out of the classroom and I was with UW Engineering and Medicine. And one of the things they just like when it came to like selling these amazing engineering ideas to the big 5 companies here in the Seattle area, they would always come to me like, you're the expert writer because you're the English major. And I'd sit there like, no, I'm still learning. And the biggest like shift I saw in that role was how engineers talk, how medical folks talk, but they had these beautiful creative ideas, but they would put themselves down and wouldn't say like, oh, how do I explain this to them? And then like we would go into presentations, they would show data on the screen and I would like, yeah, let's not show them the data, but let's show your enthusiasm. Let's show this is how we can get $10 million out of T-Mobile. Like, we got to like work on these things. So that was a lot of the work we did, but it's exactly that what you just said. So I appreciate that. Sorry.
Anything else in that one?
I just want to say really fast that I'm not sure how we can join forces as much as collectively we're adopting this new age of technology and access to so many sources where there is a responsibility for ethics and morals and decent writing that but what does that mean, right? Because we all cheat a little bit with Grammarly or the correction, the automatic correction. And so where does it begin and where does it end? And how do we show our students that that's great, I use it myself, but being where you're at, you need to avoid all of that. Where do we come together how do we get together to do that? So I don't know how, but we know that we need to do it. Because of the people using, how do we get them to understand that that's great, that's wonderful. You said all you need to and all you want, but while you're going through this process, you, from your mind, put it down.
Yeah, and it's no longer enough to have a correct piece of anything, because anyone can have that, you know, and so the more that we can explain to students that where are you in this, and if we can all express that the value is, you know, representing what you want to express in a way that other people can understand it. And you know, it used to be that you represented yourself as an educated person with a correct sort of paper. Now it's who are you, where are you here? And if we can, you know, together thinking about writing as a lifelong skill beyond the classroom, not just, you know, educational communication, but professional communication and also life communication, and this idea of where are you in this piece of writing? Because it's perfection is nothing now. It's nothing, you know, it's again, it's almost a deficit. As a, you know, writing instructor, if I see something that's perfect right away, you know, perfect in quotation marks, because it's lifeless, you know, where is your life force in this? And if we can talk with students about, you know, their voice, their essence within a piece, even, you know, no matter what discipline it's in, it seems to me like they may be able to be persuaded, you know, that writing matters, and not just the correctness of writing, but the self within writings.
Doesn't that go back to your earlier comment though, or your earlier point that it's so important, the comments that you put to students back on their paper? So if that's where you're trying to you know, that's where you're trying, not steer them, but those comments become so important in getting them to kind of get their head around that notion of integrity, but also you know, reflecting their personality and then their interests and their academic skills, you know.
And if those comments can connect
Yes,
rather
yeah.
than correct,
Yes,
you
exactly.
know,
Yeah,
then that would
yeah.
be me writing
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
All right.
It kind of makes me think about that reflecting piece that you kind of are all getting at, like, makes me think when I go home, I wanna like have my students start reflecting on their writing or their work in general more often. And I think, you know, I'm hearing a lot of that reflection piece and how writing is important and.
Well, too, if we have our students reflecting and writing from that personal perspective, we can distinguish when we get something from them that doesn't sound like them. So I mean, that we do have ways of negotiating that. Okay, one last question. It's for all of us. So the last question just opens up panelists, everyone in the audience. And the question has to do with shared purpose. But if there was any of the other previous questions that you just had a burning desire to talk about, please, as in the audience, please contribute in that way too. But the question up for now is shared purpose. In what ways can spaces like writing synergies, as we sort of move ahead with this, cultivate a writing culture by fostering a shared purpose that links our entire campus community? And our entire campus community is broad. You know, we have maintenance, we have safety, we have, I mean, every level of this campus, every area of this campus is important because we're all interacting with students. So that notion of shared purpose, in what ways can writing synergies cultivate a writing culture by fostering a shared purpose across our campus community? Any thoughts on that?
I think that we have, you know, we talk about trying to sell is not the right word. Some ways it is actually, convince students across disciplines that writing, they're gonna have to write. You know, so the more different voices we can get in to say that, you know, this is, it's part of the real world. You know, it's not just right the analysis of the short story that, you know, even a 5-paragraph argument. But it's, you know, there's gotta be some buy-in there, because, you know, we had this conversation came up in our division meeting yesterday, what are we trying to do here? You know, we try to get citizens or prepare people for jobs, and we gotta be honest, the culture right now is prepare people for jobs. That's what the audience wants, that's where I get a lot. I would love to go back to, you know, liberal arts education, all that stuff, but, you know, so we can, the more stories, the more anecdotal evidence we can bring in to say that, hey, you go in this field, you go in this field, you go in this field. Everyone here works in education. What we need to do is have people that work in business. for
Sorry, he
students,
couldn't make it.
Or faculty and students.
Yeah.
Because I think that's, I mean, I got friends that run businesses. And, you know, buddy of mine has a big finance business, and he's like, we're gonna, I'll hire somebody, right, before I can hire someone with a finance degree.
I gotta tell you, I'm always telling myself, what you said is so true, but I'm always telling myself, by the way, I was an athlete and I quit coaching because I told myself the minute that I cannot show the athlete how to do it, because I did it myself, I'm not gonna coach anymore. And so now I'm always trying to stay on the edge with, try and work outside. Because if I'm gonna tell a student how to do a website, then I need to be able to be running one myself. Or, and so I've been out there, but I have had to think about it. So I've been putting myself out there over and over and over again, so that when I come to the classroom, I can show them that I'm not talking about what I read or studied. I actually, so I did, and then I got this degree for it, but look, I just did it, which I didn't have for a long time, by the way.
I appreciate that a lot. One of the things that what you were just saying, Michael, is, bringing in people from the industry. And I think if I were to say what my big goal or our big goal is exactly that, like the staff and the faculty that are in here today, you give us that insight, people in our community, and we need to understand how, like, what are they going to walk into? What is engineer writing looking like? What does it look like? How can we bring these folks into these conversations? Because it is those transferable skills. We have to understand how effective what we're doing here is, right? And so that's where I'm 100% on that too. It's like, who do we know from the industry? Who was willing to come talk? And I think exactly the staff piece to me is so important, because we have staff that are already in these professions doing writing, maybe little, maybe like long writing, whatever it is, but they're doing that everyday writing, right? And so I really appreciate that, Michael. Thank you.
That could be a good synergy.
Yes.
Session to try to get
Yes.
a panel.
Yeah.
I may or may have not already planned it, but I'm hopeful it will happen. Okay.
Those of us who are in prof tech have to do some of those things. So for example, and for one education planning day, we bring in paralegals and attorneys, and they talk about what it's like to work in the industry, what is required of writing, what you should anticipate. And those are very powerful. I think we're a small program, but we had over 50 students show up last year for that, which was awesome. And we had people outside of paralegals show up, which was even better. The second point you made about in regards to, are we preparing people for jobs or are we preparing them for life? I don't think it's an either or, I think it's either. The reflection that I'm teaching them to do, or they're being forced to do about their own work, is reflection work they can then use as they move outside and they start setting goals for themselves. When I talk about communication and writing, I don't just talk about it as the idea of you're doing this to be persuasive at work. But hey, if you want to get a date with someone, you're going to be on technology and you got to learn how to persuade them for sentence together. And so I think that it's not either or. I think we can still teach it as both.
I agree completely, but I'm just saying from a student perspective, especially, you hear about declining enrollment and interest, especially at the 4-year level, it's because why am I gonna pay all this money unless the kids read this? And it's like, when I went off to college as an undergraduate, it was about A, get out and be Harvard. But B, it was like, bring on the world, man. Bring on some ideas. Get a job. Spell job.
Can't spell. I love that energy.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. I'm the program chair for community health, which by the way, thank you to you both for creating the classes that my students go to. For community health, it's not sense of the English 101 class where you're doing a lot of writing, but for the many variety and types of writing that you do. So like every single kind of writing that the entire panel talked about, my students have to do every single kind of that type of writing. Because there's so many different areas in public health that we have to teach our students because they can go into, whether it's advocacy or epidemiology or environmental health or it is just, and so we have to teach them all of it. Legal, they have to do health, legal, law and ethics, they have to, you know, and so, and you don't know which avenue our students gonna then graduate and say, I want to go here. Some go on to do PA school. And so we have to prepare them for every single kind of writing that they might run into, marketing, public health marketing, all the vaccine materials that you see out there, all the commercials, somebody in public health did that. And so for me and one other faculty member to try and be experts in all of that kind of writing, is silly.
Yeah.
Be an expert in all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we learned how to do it all. But being able to come to something like this and say, so tell me, in, you know, in health law ethics, you know, how are you doing this? Or how are you doing in, you know, for your lab reports, chemistry, the epidemiology, how do you think, you know, I think it's going to be so amazing for our department. So, thank you for putting this together.
You're making the whole chameleon thing symbol really work right there, what you just said. It's like I do think of students as chameleons in a way that they're gonna be pink in my classroom, and then in nursing, they might be blue. But then they might be green also in nursing because it's a different type of nursing. And one of the things that engineering was really like open-minded, there's so many types of engineering and they all talk so differently in the way they connect. And then it was like, I think one of the things that like, I was just like listening here is that idea of expertise as well. We can't be experts. And when people would come to me in engineering and, you know, they're like, okay, you're the expert of English. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I guess, but like, not really. But it's the end of the day, so you're always changing. Like, even that job taught me so much about how it works in engineering medicine. I'm always changing my colors. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how some of our students didn't go crazy because they'll take the classes and it's like, okay, for this class, I want you to put this hat on and make a reflective, persuasive marketing campaign. And then, oh, wait, now you have to change, put a different hat on because in this class, I want you to write a technical report on, you know, environmental, you know, something rather. And, you know, yeah, I don't know how that works.
No, it's remarkable. Yeah, the discipline. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm also very excited for this because I work in the writing tutoring center. Hi, Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay, let us know if you can hear the audience. I hope it's a new owl, by the way. It's the latest one, so it should be able to pick up farther. Yeah, I'm a nerd and I know these things. I don't know why.
Groups like this can just cultivate writing by talking about writing. I mean, we're bringing a lot of these professors that come from different fields, like that can contribute their specific knowledge. Like Dr. Ramos, I took your class, and so I know that a certain percentage of communication is verbal versus nonverbal, and you know, content filters and all that. So you can contribute that to a meeting, and then Ms. Stafford can talk about chemistry, and then everyone can just contribute. And I think it would. I love the idea of this. Really, I think thinking of writing as like a conscious action instead of just something you do.
But also as interdisciplinary, as you just pointed out, which has set you up for the writing and tutoring center work. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad you all collaborate with us.
Thank you. All right, is there any other final questions? I think we're there. Anyone else? Final? I do want to thank the panel and for all your work prior to this. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to the session today. If you have any questions for any of us, please grab us and we'd be glad to help you. But again, thank you for coming.
Thank you. And if you know any faculty that want to interview, let us know.
Thank you both.
Yeah. Let me just stop recording real quick. All right, Lindsay, I'm gonna stop recording. And what,
Right.
were you able to hear everything?
It was hard to hear the audience, but I could hear the panelists.
That's perfect. All righty, Lindsay, thank you.
Right. Thank you so much.
With you soon, okay?
Bye.
Bye.